The sea breeze blew fiercely, carrying the salty tang of the ocean, but I no longer felt the familiar beauty of the scene before me. My phone screen lit up with a familiar name. My father. My heart sank the moment I saw it. I knew something was wrong. He never called me without a reason, and I was all too familiar with the reason behind these calls. I raised the phone to my ear and my father's deep, firm voice came through immediately. Lauren, there's something I need to talk to you about. I gripped the phone tighter, my hands ice cold despite the summer heat. Is this about Rachel again? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He hesitated for a moment as if choosing his words carefully. I had no other choice. Rachel is in trouble, and we can't just let her face this alone. I closed my eyes, my worry quickly turning into anger as I realized what was coming. What did you do? I asked, trying to stay calm, but my voice trembled with fury. I sold the vacation home. The contract is signed, just waiting for the transfer. A storm of rage crashed inside my chest, like waves slamming against the cliffs below. You sold the vacation home without telling me? How could you do this? I nearly shouted. You hardly even use it, my father said, his tone growing defensive. But Rachel, she really needs help. The anger inside me flared. That house isn't just a piece of property. It's something Ethan and I worked so hard to achieve. You had no right to make that decision for me. He let out a heavy sigh. Lauren, we're family. We help each other. It's the right thing to do. I let out a bitter laugh. I had heard this my entire life. Family, helping each other. But in this endless cycle, I was always the one making the sacrifices. I am Lauren Carter and my life has never truly been my own. Memories of my childhood rushed back like a fast-forward reel, fragments of a life where I had never been in control. I remembered my 6th birthday when I finally got the doll I had been wishing for all year. I had grinned with excitement as I tore open the wrapping paper, my heart pounding with joy. But that happiness didn't last long. Rachel, my younger sister 3 years my junior, saw the doll and burst into tears. My mother immediately turned to me, her expression firm. Lauren, you're older. Let Rachel have it. She's still little. I held the doll close to my chest, but my mother's gaze and Rachel's relentless crying forced me to hand it over. That night, I lay in bed, listening to Rachel happily playing with my doll, and I realized one thing. I would never be as important as my sister. But the story didn't end with just a doll. When I was 8, I received a set of paints for Christmas. I fell in love with it instantly. The shiny tubes of color felt like a small treasure. I spent the entire morning painting, happily lost in my own world. Then Rachel saw it. She wants to paint too, my mother said when Rachel tried to snatch my paint set. You're the big sister, you should share. What did sharing mean? It meant Rachel took everything that was mine, and all I could do was watch. When I was 10, I wanted to join a dance class, but my parents said there wasn't enough money because they were paying for Rachel's piano lessons. I cried, but my tears didn't matter as much as my sister's hobbies. When I was 13, I won an award in a school writing competition, but my parents didn't even attend the ceremony. Rachel has a piano recital that day, my mother said. You understand, right? When I was 16, I earned the highest score on my midterm exams and came home beaming with pride. But my parents only asked one question. Did Rachel do well? Little by little, I stopped trying to earn their approval. Because no matter what I did, they would never care. The only time I was able to take control of my own life was when I went to college, where I met Ethan. Together we built a business, working day and night to achieve everything we had. And this vacation home, this was a symbol of our years of hard work, not just some asset that could be casually sold. And yet, my parents sold it, without asking, without hesitation, all because of Rachel. I gripped the phone tightly, my voice colder than ever. You forged my signature to sell the house, didn't you? My father fell silent. I took a deep breath, feeling every wave crashing against the cliffs below me. This isn't a family matter anymore. This is fraud. I hung up. The night was slowly settling in, but I no longer had the mind to admire the breathtaking scenery. All I felt was betrayal and the storm of anger surging in my chest. They had gone too far this time, and I wasn't going to let this go. I had decided to distance myself from my family long ago, but it wasn't until college that I truly felt what freedom meant. No more family dinners where every conversation revolved around Rachel. No more demands for me to sacrifice for my sister. I could finally make my own decisions, live my life the way I wanted. I majored in business administration at a university in California, far from the home where I had grown up. No one from my family saw me off when I moved into my dorm, but I hadn't expected them to. I had long understood that nothing I did would ever be acknowledged by my parents. They were too preoccupied with Rachel to care about me. At first I balanced school and part-time jobs to support myself. I worked as a barista at a small cafe near campus, waking up early to brew coffee before rushing to class. At night I studied late at the library. Life was hectic, but for the first time ever I felt like I was living for myself, no longer tied down by anyone else's expectations. It was during this time that I met Ethan. Ethan was 2 years older than me, a senior in the economics department. He was the kind of person who exuded confidence and passion, especially when it came to startups. We first met at a business seminar where Ethan was on stage speaking about the potential of the outdoor sports market. After the seminar, we happened to strike up a conversation while waiting in line for coffee. "Lauren, right? I saw you taking notes pretty diligently," Ethan said with a friendly smile, his eyes gleaming with interest. I nodded. "It's a fascinating topic. I want to try my hand at business after graduation." He tilted his head slightly, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "If you're really interested, I might have an idea you'd like." A few days later, Ethan invited me to join a small group of students who shared a passion for entrepreneurship. They were planning to launch a company specializing in distributing marine sports equipment, particularly surfboards and accessories. I had never tried any water sports before, but Ethan's enthusiasm was contagious. The first time I stood on the shore, watching the waves crash onto the beach, I felt a sense of freedom I had never known before. Ethan handed me a surfboard, his smile filled with encouragement. "It's not easy, but give it a try." I plunged into the water, getting knocked down by the waves over and over again, my face burned with exhaustion and frustration. But Ethan just laughed. "Everyone's like this their first time, just keep trying." And so I did, again and again, until I finally managed to stand on the board, feeling the cool ocean breeze rush past me. It was a magical moment. Like the first time I had ever done something just for myself, not for anyone else. Just like that, I gradually became immersed in Ethan's startup project. We worked day and night to build the company, sourcing products from small manufacturers and trying to break into the market. During the day I still attended classes, but at night I dedicated all my time to the business. While my classmates were out enjoying college life, I was writing business plans, making calls to suppliers, and strategizing marketing campaigns. At first nothing was easy. No one wanted to partner with a group of inexperienced college students. We faced rejection after rejection, but Ethan never gave up and neither did I. We attended marine sports events, networked with athletes, and slowly built our reputation. 2 years after graduation, we landed our first customers. Then the company started growing. We expanded into other states, signed deals with larger suppliers, and turned what was once just a vague idea among students into a real thriving business. And then we bought the beach house. It wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of all our hard work. The sleepless nights, the failures, and the moments of victory. The day we moved in, Ethan and I stood on the veranda, watching the sun set over the ocean. "We did it," he said, taking my hand. I smiled. "Yeah, this is just the beginning." But no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I built my own life, my parents never acknowledged anything I did. They were never proud of me for starting my company. They never asked about my success, but every time Rachel got into trouble, they called me. Rachel dropped out of college after just 1 year. She said the academic pressure was too much. Then she jumped from job to job, never staying anywhere for long. And soon she started accumulating debt. First, it was credit cards, then personal loans. For the first time, my parents called me not to ask about my life but to ask for money. They told me Rachel was struggling and that I should help my sister. I refused. But they didn't give up. They did everything they could to get more money, even selling land and draining their savings. I didn't know how much they had given Rachel over the years, but I did know that every time she made a mistake, they were there to clean up the mess. And this time they had sold my vacation home. I stared at my phone screen, the call now ended. My heart felt like it was being crushed. I had spent my entire life trying to prove that I wasn't invisible in this family. But to my parents, the only person who ever truly mattered was Rachel. This time I wouldn't stay silent. I grabbed my car keys and stepped out of the vacation home. If they thought I would let this go, they were wrong. I drove back to the city that very night, my anger still burning in my chest as I arrived at the police station. I had gathered enough evidence, fraudulent signatures, transfer documents, and text messages from my father to the buyer proving he had planned to sell the house for months. The officer on duty flipped through the documents, then looked up at me, his expression serious. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Fraud or not, they're still your parents." I took a deep breath. "I'm sure. They've gone too far, and I won't let them keep doing this." A few days later, the police launched an official investigation. My parents were summoned for questioning. When the officers arrived at their house, my mother panicked and called me over and over again. I didn't answer. I no longer cared about their excuses or pleas. As news of the investigation spread, my father was forced to resign. He had been a well-respected financial officer at his company, but once the fraud was exposed, his reputation crumbled instantly. He was asked to leave immediately, losing his main source of income. My mother, who had spent her entire life enjoying comfort and security, suddenly had to struggle just to make ends meet. She took on multiple part-time jobs, answering calls at a customer service center during the day, cleaning office buildings at night. She had once looked down on jobs like these, but now, she had no choice. But even with all their efforts, it still wasn't enough to cover the massive debt they had taken on for Rachel. And just as I had expected, Rachel hadn't changed at all. After being caught up in a financial scam, she lost the last of her money and once again turned to my parents for help, but this time they had nothing left to give her. Rachel came to me. One evening, while I was at my office, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. "Lauren, it's me." Her voice was filled with desperation. I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me. "Rachel, what do you want now?" "You have to help me," she sobbed. "You don't understand. I have nothing left. I can't pay my rent. My credit cards are maxed out. You can't just abandon me." I tightened my grip on the phone. "Why should I help you?" Rachel choked back a sob. "Because we're family." I let out a cold laugh. "Family? Since when have you and our parents ever treated me like family?" "You're the only one who can help me," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Just lend me $50,000. I swear I'll pay you back." I didn't hesitate, no. "Lauren, you can't do this. You're my sister. And you've taken advantage of me enough." My voice was ice cold. "You need to take responsibility for your own life." Rachel screamed, cursing at me, but I calmly ended the call. I was too tired to listen to more excuses or meaningless blame. The investigation lasted several months. In the end, my parents were convicted of forgery and fraud. Since it was their first offense, they received a suspended sentence, but their reputation was completely destroyed. The house they once lived in was seized to pay off debts. They had to move into a run-down apartment on the outskirts of town, where they knew no one. As for Rachel, no one knew where she had gone. Some said she had moved in with a man, still hoping to find someone to take care of her. But I no longer cared. For the first time in months, I stood on the veranda of the vacation home, letting the gentle waves and salty breeze wash over me. Ethan stepped out from the house and draped a jacket over my shoulders. "Are you okay?" I nodded, better than ever. We spent days thinking about the future of this house. It wasn't just a piece of property, it was a symbol of our dreams, our perseverance, and the freedom I had fought so hard to claim after years of being overlooked. Ethan took my hand, his eyes filled with determination. "I have an idea." "What is it?" "Let's turn this place into a charity center for children," he said with a smile. "Kids who have no one to believe in them, no one to give them a chance. I want them to experience marine sports, to learn how to be strong, just like you did." I stayed silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. I thought back to my childhood, to all those years when I felt abandoned, desperately wanting someone to acknowledge me. If someone had believed in me earlier, maybe things would have been different. I squeezed Ethan's hand and gave him a genuine smile. "Let's do it." The waves crashed onto the shore, carrying a sense of peace I had never felt before. My old family may have fallen apart, but I had found a new one, a family I chose, and this time, I wouldn't let anyone take it away from me. The sun slowly dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. Standing on the veranda of our beach house, I took a deep breath, savoring the scent of the ocean and the freedom I had fought so hard to achieve. This house, the one that was almost stolen from me, now stood as proof of my independence, of the path I had chosen for myself. Turning it into a charity center wasn't just a passing idea, it was a decision that gave me a true sense of purpose. My entire life I had been forced to prove my worth to people who never cared to see it. But not anymore. I no longer needed my parents' approval or anyone else's validation. I only needed to do what I believed was right. Ethan and I got to work immediately. We reached out to nonprofit organizations and foster care centers, building a program that would give underprivileged kids the chance to experience marine sports. Before long, our vacation home was no longer just a private retreat. It became a sanctuary for children eager for an opportunity to challenge themselves, just as I once had. The first days were incredibly busy. We organized small workshops teaching the kids basic surfing and paddling skills. Seeing the excitement in their eyes as they felt the ocean's power for the first time, I suddenly saw a reflection of my younger self, a girl suffocated by unfair expectations, who had finally found her escape in the deep blue waves. One day I stood on the beach watching a young boy struggling on his surfboard. He looked hesitant, clearly afraid of falling. I stepped closer, sat down beside him and spoke gently. When I first started, I fell hundreds of times too. The boy looked up at me, curiosity in his eyes. Were you scared too? I laughed, of course, but then I realized that every time I fell into the water, I just had to get back up and try again. As long as you don't give up, you'll make it. He pressed his lips together, then nodded. Stepping back into the ocean, he tried again. This time he stood steadier, and as he glided across the water, a bright smile lit up his face. Watching that moment, I knew I was doing the right thing. As time passed, more and more children came. For some, it was their first time ever feeling the freedom of the ocean, their first time having someone believe in them. Our beach house was no longer just a place to escape from the chaos of life. It had become a place of hope. Ethan was by my side every step of the way. He wasn't just my partner in life. He was the one person who had always believed in me even when the whole world turned away. One evening as we stood on the veranda, watching the moonlight shimmer on the ocean, Ethan suddenly spoke. I think you've found your path. I turned to him, smiling softly. Maybe I have. He took my hand, his eyes filled with pride. I've always known you were strong, but seeing you truly happy with what you're doing, that means more than anything. I squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth spread through my fingers. I spent too much time trying to please people who never valued me. But now, it's different. I don't have to prove anything anymore. I didn't know how my parents and Rachel were doing, but I no longer cared. After their fraud was exposed, they had to face the consequences of their own actions. I was no longer Rachel's shadow, no longer the forgotten child. I was just me. The last I heard, my father was still drowning in debt. My mother continued working multiple jobs to survive, with no one left to depend on. And Rachel, as expected, had fallen into yet another failed investment and was desperately trying to escape the mess she had made. But none of that mattered to me anymore. Standing before the ocean, I felt a peace I had never known before. At last, I had broken free from the cycle of meaningless sacrifice. At last, I was truly free. Life isn't always fair, and sometimes the people closest to us cause the deepest wounds. But instead of staying trapped in that pain, we have the power to choose our own path. Lauren spent years seeking validation from her parents, only to realize that her worth was never dependent on their approval. True freedom comes when we let go of unworthy burdens and start living for ourselves. What do you think about Lauren's story? If you were in her situation, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family, life, and the journey to self-worth.